As we sit here, there are more than 1 billion people around the world who don't have access to a bank account, but could through mobile phones if the right system existed. And that includes more than 14 million people right here in the US. Being shut out of the financial system has real consequences for people's lives, and it's often the most disadvantaged people who pay the highest price. People pay far too high a cost and have to wait far too long to send money home to their families abroad. The current system is failing them. The financial industry is stagnant, and there is no digital financial architecture to support the innovation that we need. I believe that this problem can be solved, and Libra can help. Now, we've faced a lot of issues over the past few years, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who wish it were anyone but Facebook who were helping to propose this. But there's a reason that we care about this, and that's because Facebook is about putting power in people's hands. Our services already give people a voice to express what matters to them and to build businesses that create opportunity. Giving people control of their money is important too, and a simple, secure, and stable way to transfer money is empowering. Over the long term, if this means that more people transact on our platforms, that'll be good for our business. But even if it doesn't, I still think this could help people everywhere. Before we move forward, there are important risks that need to be addressed. There are questions about financial stability, fighting terrorism, and more, and I'm here today to discuss those risks and how we plan to address them. But I also hope that we get a chance to talk about the risks of not being successful, and it's why our tech industry has led the world. So we co-wrote a white paper to put this idea out into the world and to start a conversation with regulators and experts and governance. And today's hearing is an important part of that process. What we're discussing today is too important for any single company to undertake on its own. And that's why we helped to found the Libra Association. It's a coalition of 21 companies and nonprofits that are working to give everyone access to financial tools. But even though the Libra Association is independent and we don't control it, I want to be clear. Last time I testified before Congress, I talked about taking a broader view of our responsibility, and that includes making sure our services are used for good and preventing harm. And I want to discuss that across other aspects of our work today as well. People shouldn't be discriminated against on any of our services. We have policies in place to prevent hate speech and remove harmful content, but discrimination can also show up in how ads are targeted and shown too. As part of a settlement with civil rights groups, we've banned advertisers from using age, gender, or zip codes to target housing, employment, or credit opportunities, and we've limited interest-based targeting for these ads too. This is part of our commitment to support civil rights and prevent discrimination. I also know that we need more diverse perspectives in our company. Diversity leads to better decisions and better services for our community. We've made diversity a priority in hiring, and we've also made a commitment that within 5 years, more than 50% of our workforce will be women, people of color, and other underrepresented groups. We've made some progress here. There are more people of color, women in technical and business roles, and underrepresented people in leadership at Facebook now. But I know that we still have a long way to go. Chairwoman Waters, Ranking Member McHenry, and members of the committee, to be in a position where we can make a difference in people's lives. And for as long as I'm here, I'm committed to using our position to push for big ideas that I believe can help empower people. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Facebook changes the rules when it can benefit itself. Last year, Facebook banned all cryptocurrency ads on its platform because, and I quote, "they are frequently associated with misleading or deceptive promotional practices," quote unquote. Seems fair. Then earlier this year, Facebook rolled back the cryptocurrency ad ban, bought a blockchain company, and announced its own cryptocurrency. So tell us what changed. How did cryptocurrency go from being misleading and deceptive last year and then becomes a means for financial inclusion this year? It seems to me that you shifted your stance because you realized that you can use your size and your users' data to dominate the cryptocurrency market. You changed your policy when it benefits you. You reinstated cryptocurrency ads because you had plans to start your own cryptocurrency. So this brings me back to your new policy on political speech. My question to you is, how does this new policy benefit you? Because it seems that a policy that allows politicians to lie, mislead, and deceive would also allow Facebook to sell more ads to those politicians, thus making your company more money. But you can tell me, how does Facebook benefit?
Look, from a business perspective, the very small percent of our business that is made up of political ads does not come anywhere close to justifying the controversy that this incurs for our company. So this really is not about money. This is, on principle, I believe in giving people a voice. I believe that ads can be an important part of voice. I think especially in the political process for challenger candidates and for local candidates or advocacy groups whose message might not otherwise be covered by the media. Having ads can be an important way to inject your message into the political debate.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Are you telling me, I think as you said to me before, you plan on doing no fact-checking on political ads?
Facebook itself actually does not fact-check. What we do is, we have feedback that people in our community don't want to see viral hoaxes or kind of widespread.
So let me be clear, you do no fact-checking on any ads, is that correct?
Chairwoman, what we do is we work with a set of independent fact-checkers who...
Somebody fact-checks on ads. You contract with someone to do that, is that right?
Chairwoman, yes.
In seeking to develop a payments platform internally, before you handed the technology over to the association for Libra, was that because of examples globally of competitors creating payments platforms?
Congressman, it was partially that, and it's partially because I view the financial infrastructure in the United States as outdated. So there are two sets of work that we do on payments. One is building payment systems that allow people to send money on top of the existing financial system that exists. That work is relatively less controversial. We're doing it around the world in different countries on top of existing payment systems. There's another set of work, which is what we're trying to do with Libra, which is trying to help rethink what a modern infrastructure for the financial system would be if you started it today rather than 50 years ago on a lot of outdated systems. I mean, I just look at the fact that you can send a text message to someone around the world.
Donald Trump said crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including the drug trade. I ask unanimous consent to put in the record a report by RAND talking about cryptocurrencies use by terrorists. Hopefully without objection.
Without objection, such is the order.
Not here to be anti-Facebook. I was anti-cryptocurrency back when you were anti-cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency either doesn't work, in which case investors lose a lot of money, or it does achieve its objectives, perhaps, and displaces the U.S. dollar as or interferes with the U.S. dollar being the sole reserve currency, or virtually the sole reserve currency in the world. That role of the U.S. dollar saves the average American family $1,000 in interest costs because money pours into the United States because of the role of the dollar. The Federal Reserve can turn over up to $100 billion in profits to the U.S. Treasury that we in Congress spend because of the power of the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is an excellent currency as a means of account. It serves all the needs except it's really bad for tax evaders, drug dealers, terrorists. And that unmet need can be met by a new currency. If we make drug dealers just 10% more effective, how many American deaths is that over the next decade? Does it compare to the deaths we experience from terrorism? We'll have to see. But those who are introducing cryptocurrency have got to pause and wonder what effect they'll have on the power of the United States to impose sanctions. Right now, Turkey is stopping at 20 miles into Syria, not because of U.S. troops, we're out, but because of U.S. sanctions, because of the role of the U.S. dollar. We stand to lose all that because cryptocurrency is the currency of the crypto patriot. Ms. Velasquez pointed out that you're going to wait for regulators to sign off. Regulators are working with old statutes. Your lawyers are going to show that there's a loophole in a 1940 Investment Company Act that gets you where you want to go, and the regulators can't stop you, and you're going to call that regulatory approval, as if the people in 1940 knew what you had in mind. What you've made clear is that you will go forward unless Donald Trump-appointed regulators stop you, and you will go forward if you can just find loopholes in statutes, but you'll deploy a horde of lobbyists to prevent us from writing a new statute. Ms. Maloney asked you a question that you forgot. You still forgot to answer it, but let's be clear. You're going to be making powerful burglary tools and letting your business partners commit the burglary. You are going, with all the power of Facebook, to try to create a new currency. You're going to call it the Libra, but you're the person behind it. That's why I call it the Zuck Buck. You are going to create it and then say, oh, it's our business partners. Your white paper says your business partners are going to use your tool to have anonymous accounts, and then you have the gall to come here and say you're going to follow all the know your customer. How do you know your customer with an anonymous account? Then Mr. Meeks calls your bluff on this idea that you're creating a payment system for the poor and unbanked. The poor and unbanked need pesos. They need dollars that they can buy something at a local store. You've done no effort to help the unbanked anywhere else at any other time. And you should. You should create a payment system with a close to zero fee. But the real money is in the tax evaders and to some extent the drug dealers. I know you've got at least 100 lawyers that will tell you that what you're doing is legal and that you will be safe. But given the harm that this can do, they could be very wrong. And if this explodes the way it might, especially you will not be able to hide behind the idea that you didn't create the Libra organization, that it's just your business partners that have wallets designed for drug dealers and terrorists. I have a few more things to say, but for the richest man in the world to come here and hide behind the poorest people in the world and say that's who you're really trying to help. You're trying to help those for whom the dollar is not a good currency: drug dealers, terrorists, tax evaders.
Thank you.
It has been publicly reported that when you acquire WhatsApp, Facebook officials coach the company's founder to tell European Union regulators that it will be, and I quote, really difficult to merge or blend data between Facebook and WhatsApp, and that there was no desire to integrate the two systems. Mr. Zuckerberg, 18 months later, the platforms were linked. The European Union fined Facebook for providing incorrect or misleading information. So let me ask you, do you understand why this record makes us concerned with Facebook entering the cryptocurrency space? Do you realize that you and Facebook have a credibility issue here?
Congresswoman, I understand that we have work to build trust on this, and that means making commitments, and even if we learn new things in the future that could change our mind on how we should operate, that I think we're going to need to make sure that the commitments that we make.
Have you learned that you should not lie?
Congresswoman, I would disagree with the characterization of
Well,
that as lying.
you say you went to the European regulators and you said that it will not linked. It will not, that it will be impossible. And yet, 18 months later, it happened. And you were fine for that.
Congresswoman,
So let's continue. I hope that you learned something about that. about not lying.
In order for us to make decisions about Libra, I think we need to kind of dig into your past behavior and Facebook's past behavior with respect to our democracy. Mr. Zuckerberg, what year and month did you personally first become aware of Cambridge Analytica?
I'm not sure of the exact time, but it was probably around the time when it became public. I think it was around March of 2018. I could be wrong, though.
Mm-hmm. When did Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg become aware of Cambridge Analytica?
I don't know off the top of my head.
You don't know. Did anyone on your leadership team know about Cambridge Analytica prior to the initial report by The Guardian on December 11th, 2015?
Congresswoman, I believe so, and that some folks were tracking it internally.
And
I'm actually, as you're asking this, I do think I was aware of Cambridge Analytica as an entity earlier. I don't know if I was tracking how they were using Facebook specifically.
when was the issue discussed with your board member, Peter Thiel?
Congresswoman, I don't know that off the
You don't know. This was the largest data scandal with respect to your company that had catastrophic impacts on the 2016 election. You don't know?
Well, Congresswoman, I'm sure we discussed it after we were aware of what happened.
Okay. You announced recently that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation in 2020 elections and in the future. So I just want to know how far I can push this in the next year. Under your policy, using census data as well, could I pay to target predominantly Black zip codes and advertise them the incorrect election date?
No, Congresswoman, you couldn't. We have, even for these policies around the newsworthiness of content that politicians say and the general principle that I believe that.
But you said you're not going to fact check my ads.
We have, if anyone, including a politician, is saying things that that is calling for violence or could risk imminent physical harm or voter or census suppression when we roll out the census suppression policy, we will take that content down.
So you will, there is some threshold where you will fact check political advertisements. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, Congresswoman, yes, for specific things like that, where there's imminent risk of harm.
Could I run ads targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would I be able to run advertisements on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds here. What's fair game?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think
So you don't know if I'll be able to do that?
I think probably.
Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad. That's different from it being, for in our position, the right thing to do to prevent your constituents or people in an election from seeing that you had lied.
So you won't take down lies, or you will take down lies? I think it's just a pretty simple yes or no.
Congresswoman,
I'm not talking about spin. I'm talking about actual
yes, in most cases, in a democracy, I believe that people should be able to see for themselves what politicians that they may or may not vote for
So
are
you
saying,
won't take
judge
them
their
down.
character for themselves.
So you won't take, you may flag that it's wrong, but you won't take it down.
Congresswoman, it depends on the context that it shows up. Organic post, ads, the treatment is a little bit different.
One more question. In your ongoing dinner parties with far-right figures, some of who advance the conspiracy theory that white supremacy is a hoax, did you discuss so-called social media bias against conservatives, and do you believe there is a bias?
Congresswoman, so I don't remember everything that was in the question.
That's all right. I'll move on. Can you explain why you've named the Daily Caller, a publication well-documented with ties to white supremacists, as an official fact-checker for Facebook?
Congresswoman, sure. We actually don't appoint the independent fact-checkers. They go through an independent organization called the Independent Fact-Checking Network that has a rigorous standard for who they allow to serve as a fact-checker.
So you would say that white supremacists tied publications meet a rigorous standard for fact-checking? Thank you.
Congresswoman, I would say that we're not the one assessing that standard. The International Fact-Checking Network is the one who is setting that standard. I don't believe.
So I take that as a no. You have a stable of big law firms that work on your legal cases around the country. How many diverse-owned or women-owned law firms are contracted by Facebook? Number. Just give me a number or range.
Congresswoman, I don't know.
I take that as I don't know. How many women or minority partners work on these cases?
Congresswoman, I don't know the answer to that
Okay,
question off the top
so
of my head, but
did you
I'm happy to
review
get
the
back to you
packet?
on-
Let my time. Did you review the packet? Now, have you read the report that Laura Murphy sent to you?
Congresswoman,
You've talked a lot about diversity, and you introduced her name, that about this great study in her work. Have you read it? Do you know what the recommendations were? Do you know when she issued the report? Yes or no?
I've seen the report.
Okay, tell me what the top 3 things were, because I have it right here. What were the top 3 things in her report? Somebody talked about lying in this committee. I'm only saying it.
Well, one of them was around housing ads, which we've talked about. The other was around setting up a civil rights task force.
And who's on the Civil Rights Task Force?
Sheryl Sandberg is the person she's
What's civil right? Okay, we know Cheryl's not really civil rights, so I'm trying to help you here. She's your
Inside the
COO, and I don't think there's anything, and I know Cheryl well, about civil rights in her background. So come better than that for me, if we're gonna talk civil rights.
It's an internal task force.
Do you know who the firm that you employ for civil rights is?
Congressman, I don't.
How could you not know when you have employed the most historical, the largest civil rights firm to deal with issues that are major? And this is what's so frustrating to me. It's almost like you think this is a joke. When you have ruined the lives of many people, discriminated against them. Do you know what percentage of African Americans are on Facebook in comparison to majority folks? Do you know what the percentages are?
People using the Facebook.
Yes. Do you know what the percentages are for African Americans?
I don't, because we don't collect the races of people.
Well, it came out in a report and in the Pew Research Center that was sent to you. So maybe you just don't read a lot of things that deal with civil rights or African Americans. I have a lot of questions I'm going to send to you that I'm not going to be able to get through, and I would like an answer, because this is appalling and disgusting to me, and I yield back.
Is it true that the Libra Association oversees the Libra project?
Congressman, yes.
And is it true that global corporations make up the association?
Congressman, the association is made of, today, 21 companies and nonprofit organizations as well.
Of the 21, how many are headed by women?
Congressman, I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can get it for you.
Well, I believe you can get it, Mr. Zuckerberg, but one would assume that you would know who heads these corporations that are going to be running this global company. How many of them are minorities, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Congressman, I do not know off the top of my head.
Are there any members of the LGBTQ plus community associated with this association, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Congressman, I don't know the answer.
Who acknowledge, there are many people who acknowledge that they are a part of the community.
Sorry?
You do not know. Mr. Zuckerberg, is it true that the overwhelming majority of persons associated with this endeavor are white men?
Congressman, I don't know off the top of my head the list of the people who are running the organizations in the association.
Well, I must say that I would assume that you would have the answers, but I would greatly appreciate it if you would share this with me, because I plan to share it with the public. The public needs to know whether this is an organization that is truly diverse or whether it is an organization that is owned and operated by a small group of persons, all of whom have similar characteristics, for want of better terminology.